Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking into your sources on, well, a truly defining moment. Winston Churchill's "We Shall Fight on the Beaches" speech. He gave this to the House of Commons, June 4th, 1940.
Yeah, and this deep dive, it's really important because the source material you sent really pushes us past just the famous words. We have to grapple with the immediate reality after Dunkirk.
Right.
You had this incredible, almost unbelievable deliverance, but it was happening alongside a colossal military disaster.
That tension. It must have been almost unbearable. The listener who shared this really wanted to get inside how Churchill managed that. Leading a nation feeling release, but also, facing this existential threat.
Absolutely.
And speaking of threat, just how fast did everything collapse before he stood up to speak?
The speed is, it's key to understanding the pressure. The French lines at Sedan on the Meuse, they just broke, second week of May.
That quick.
Oh, yeah. Those German armored divisions moved incredibly fast. So by June 4th, when Churchill's speaking, the main British force, the BEF, they'd literally just got back evacuated in the days right before. The shock was still palpable.
And the source material points out something interesting. Churchill had sort of two jobs with this speech, didn't he?
Exactly. Two competing goals, almost. First, he needed to check that wave of national euphoria. People saw the troops coming home and thought, okay, victory.
Which it wasn't.
Not at all. And second, he had to send a very clear, very strategic, well, frankly, a somewhat desperate signal to the United States for help.
So he's trying to convince the world Britain won't fold.
Right.
While also having to admit they just suffered what he called the greatest military disaster in their history.
Precisely. He had to balance that relief, that miracle, with the cold, hard, terrible facts of where they stood militarily.
Okay, let's unpack those terrible facts. Starting with the military collapse itself, Churchill used this image, a sharp scythe sweeping to the coast.
Yeah.
What did that look like on the ground?
It paints a picture of a total system breakdown. The Germans weren't aiming for a traditional battle win. They unleashed, 8 or 9 Panzer divisions, each with hundreds of tanks, vehicles.
Wow.
And they didn't just push, they drove deep and fast. The goal was to physically cut the lines, communication, food, ammo, command, everything, connecting the Allied armies in the north, including the Brits, from the main French forces further south.
So it wasn't just pushing the front line back, it was like slicing the whole structure apart.
Exactly like slicing. That armored scythe, as he put it, just swept right up the coast. Boulogne-Calais nearly got to Dunkirk itself. It trapped over 400,000 Allied soldiers. Imagine being one of them. Your orders stop making sense, supplies vanish, and your escape route is just closing.
And right in the middle of that chaos, Churchill has to address this really difficult point. The King of the Belgians. That surrender caused a huge problem for the BEF, didn't it?
A massive problem, and immediate. The Belgian king had asked for Allied help, then bam, suddenly he surrenders his entire army, nearly 500,000 men, without even telling his own government properly, let alone the Allies.
Churchill called it a pitiful episode, which sounds, quite restrained, given the impact.
Extremely restrained, because that surrender instantly uncovered the entire British left flank. We're talking a gap of over 30 miles.
Open.
Wide open. And the BEF had to plug it immediately with no notice. That's what forced that frantic scramble back towards Dunkirk. If they hadn't covered that gap, the whole army could have been encircled. Finished.
But the source highlights something else in that vacuum.
Yeah.
A really vital sacrifice at Calais.
Yes. Calais is crucial. This defense, it was by a pretty small force, relatively speaking, about 4,000 troops, rifle brigade, Queen Victoria's rifles, some tanks, about 1,000 French soldiers too.
And the German commander offered them terms.
He did, gave the brigadier an hour to surrender, the brigadier refused, and his men held Calais for 4 days. Intense street fighting.
4 days? That must have felt like an eternity.
It bought precious time. The cost was immense. Only 30 unwounded men got out. But because they fought so hard, the Germans had to use at least 2 Panzer divisions to deal with them. Divisions that could have been attacking the BEF, trying to get to Dunkirk.
So those 4,000 basically saved the army.
They bought the time that made Operation Dynamo, the Dunkirk evacuation, even possible, a critical holding action.
That kind of sacrifice, it's hard to comprehend. And it leads us straight into Dynamo, the miracle of deliverance. Let's talk numbers, because the initial outlook was grim.
Oh, incredibly grim. When Dynamo started May 26th, the hope, maybe the best hope, was to get perhaps 45,000 men out.
45,000. out of nearly 500,000 trapped.
It sounds tiny, right? But even that seemed optimistic given the speed of the German advance and the chaos.
But the actual number, it just blows that away. The source says over 338,000 Allied troops got back, including French soldiers too.
Over 338,000, including about 26,000 French troops. It was staggering. A testament to, well, the Royal Navy and an incredible civilian effort.
Tell us about that effort.
We're talking 220 light warships, yes, but also 650 other boats, fishing trawlers, pleasure yachts, ferries, anything that could cross the channel.
The little ships.
The legendary little ships, all operating under constant air attack, dealing with mines, and then as the perimeter shrank, artillery fire right onto the beaches.
And the source points out the sheer brutality that even hospital ships, clearly marked, were targeted by German bombs. The courage of those sailors, Navy and civilian.
It's almost unimaginable. But even as the nation breathed this huge sigh of relief, Churchill slammed on the brakes rhetorically. He had to give that reality check.
That famous line.
We must be very careful not to assign to this deliverance the attributes of a victory. Wars are not won by evacuations. He drove that point home.
A deliverance from the jaws of death and shame, as he put it, but definitely not a win. How did he manage that turn? From disaster report to, well, absolute resolve.
He found a victory within the deliverance, and that victory belonged to the Royal Air Force, the RAF.
Ah, yes. The air battle over the beaches, that was key to keeping the evacuation going, wasn't it? Why didn't the Luftwaffe stop it?
Well, they certainly tried. The Germans threw huge air power at Dunkirk, trying to sink the ships, bomb the men on the beaches, but the RAF's home-based fighters met them head-on.
And beat them.
Systematically frustrated them, as the source says. This was the first major test, really, of Britain's air defense strategy, and it worked. Churchill claimed the RAF inflicted losses of at least 4-1.
And those stories. German bombers turning back when faced by just a quarter their number of RAF fighters. Or that one Spitfire chasing off a German plane even after running out of ammo.
Incredible acts of courage, yes, but also proof. Proof that the pilots and their planes, the Hurricanes and Spitfires, were better than the Germans expected. The Battle of Britain was, in a way, starting right there over Dunkirk.
Which explains that amazing tribute he paid them, comparing the pilots to Knights of the Round Table crusaders. Wielding these instruments of colossal and shattering power. It was a signal, wasn't it, that Britain could defend itself.
A powerful signal of hope from the air, yes, but, and this is the crucial counterpoint, that hope came with a devastating price paid on the ground. The material cost of Dunkirk was enormous.
Let's get into that price tag, because this is central to what the listener wanted to understand. Beyond the human cost, over 30,000 casualties, the equipment loss was catastrophic.
That's the core of the colossal military disaster part. Nearly 1,000 artillery pieces lost, and, critically, all the Army's transport in the north. All of it.
Yeah.
And all the tanks and armored vehicles. Gone.
And the source stresses this wasn't just old kit. The BEF was well-equipped, right? Were the first fruits of industry.
Exactly. The best stuff Britain had produced up to that point. Brand new tanks, the latest guns, all left behind on the beaches or destroyed. This wasn't just a loss, it was a sudden and serious loss that crippled Britain's ability to rebuild its army quickly.
So the immediate future wasn't about attacking. It was just about surviving and rearming.
Absolutely. For the next year, maybe 18 months, British factories had to focus almost entirely on replacing those losses just to defend the UK itself. Forget planning any major offensive action on the continent. That loss fundamentally reset the timetable of the war for Britain.
That's huge. And add to that, the French army weakened, the Belgian army gone, the Germans now holding channel ports, controlling industrial areas. The situation was about as bad as it could possibly be.
Existential is the word, and Churchill didn't sugarcoat it. He warned Parliament, warned the nation to expect the next blow almost immediately. He specifically mentioned the threat of invasion, something Britain hadn't seriously faced since Napoleon.
And internally, he talked about tightening security.
Yes, harsh measures, more checks on enemy aliens, sure, but also cracking down hard on British citizens suspected of fifth column activities.
That term, fifth column, it speaks volumes about the fear at the time, doesn't it? Fear of traitors, spies, saboteurs working from within.
Immense fear. And Churchill made it clear the government had the power from Parliament to put down that threat with a strong hand, and they wouldn't hesitate. National survival trumped everything.
So you have this backdrop, devastating loss, a desperate scramble to rearm, the threat of imminent invasion, a crackdown on internal enemies, and then comes the end of the speech, that defiant climax.
Right. He emphasized this wasn't just his resolve. It was the government, parliament, the nation, all united. He'd spent all this time laying out the grim reality of the material weakness. And then he pivots entirely to absolute moral certainty, unshakable political will.
And delivers arguably the most famous lines of the 20th century. We shall go on to the anthem.
To fight in France, we shall fight on the seas and oceans, we shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air, we shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be.
We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields.